In the beginning, I would like to extend a warm Dashidelic to all my Dharma companions who have assembled here and who assemble here every year. We are Dharma friends, and that is only due to the good karmas and merit that we have accumulated in previous lifetimes. This is how we established this connection. It did not just happen by accident. And so the topic will be Milarepa, and we will talk about perseverance on the path. The reason why we need to talk about perseverance is that now, depending on unfortunate karma that has been accumulated from lifetime to lifetime in previous lifetimes, and that we will accumulate until we attain enlightenment, that is the cause for the wish for benefit for all beings, and the cause of the arising of all great attributes. Depending on those virtuous karmas, we will receive positive results. The virtuous karma depends on our perseverance, and depending on that, we will receive positive results. For that, and having entered the Buddha's teachings, one needs to have a conviction and assurance in the workings of karma, cause and effect. Lord Jigten Sungyen has said, if one has assurance in karma, cause and effect, then there is no need to know many other dharmas. But if one doesn't know, one doesn't have any conviction in cause and effect, then even if one knows other dharmas, they are essenceless. It is as though it is thundering outside, but if the rain is not falling, then there is no benefit from it. It has no essence. Therefore, it is necessary to cultivate conviction in karma, cause and effect. So the Buddha again and again forms the aspiration on prayer, saying, May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. The causes of happiness are nothing but precious bodhicitta. Depending on the cause of virtue, we will receive the temporary results of being reborn in the higher states, and ultimately we will achieve enlightenment. And the root of all those achievements is love and compassion. Depending on the all-knowing, omniscient wisdom of the Buddha, the Buddha has recognized that love and compassion is truly precious. For 3 infinite aeons, the Buddha has engaged in the accumulation of merit, and he has only cultivated love for sentient beings in order to accomplish their welfare through the practice of the 6 perfections. Thus, the essence, like the essence of milk is butter, the essence of the practice is love and compassion. And in order to bring that about, the Buddha has engaged with great perseverance for 3 infinite aeons to bring about greater compassion, which in the end has arisen. Thus, the Buddha himself has been liberated from suffering and could provide a method to liberate others from their suffering. And it is said, if you would like to know your previous actions, look at your present body. Presently, we don't have much choice. In previous lifetimes, we have accumulated already our actions. And if we have not accumulated sufficient merit, then it is extremely difficult to meet with to encounter the Dharma teachings, to meet with spiritual guides, and to engage in practice. Only depending on karma and merit from a previous lifetime, we now have the opportunity to engage in practice. In the teachings of the precious human incarnation, with all its freedoms and endowments, the first difficulty to obtain is the precious human incarnation. Then the second, in the middle, it is extremely rare to cultivate conviction in the Dharma teachings. And lastly, it is extremely rare to actually engage in the practice of the Dharma teachings. So it is extremely rare. In the same way, the 3 jewels are called the 3 jewels because they are beyond, their value is beyond measure. They are extremely rare. Therefore, it is extremely rare and difficult that we attain the opportunity to engage in practice. And many of the young practitioners may have some devotion to the sacred Dharma teachings, and they may have little conviction in the workings of karma, but they many times do not engage in the actual practice. They don't really experience. Then they get older and older, and in the end they don't know much about the teachings of karma. Then regret arises in their mind and they feel, oh, if I would have just given rise to a little more renunciation beforehand. At that time, strong devotion into these rituals and conviction arises, and then they have to die, and then it is too late. Therefore, we all need to apply our body, speech, and mind with great diligence in the cultivation of precious bodhicitta. The cause of happiness, or the causes of happiness, can be explained in the 84,000 aggregates of Dharma teachings. But if one condenses those teachings into its essence, then the only practice is love and compassion, which is the very essence of all Dharma teachings. If one possesses love and compassion, then self-clinging will diminish. If self-clinging diminishes, then very easily one will have insight into the ultimate truth. In order to actualize this, we need to give rise to great perseverance. If we, with great perseverance, cultivate bodhicitta, we will achieve great results. So through wisdom and insight, we recognize the necessity of arousing bodhicitta in our mind. And speaking from my own perspective in the earlier stages of life, although there was the aspiration to cultivate great qualities, there still was the negative results ripening from previous lifetimes. Although there was an aspiration for Dharma, for virtue, and I took the vows, still without any choice or independence, although I didn't want to fight, I need to fight in the war. Although I didn't want to kill without any choice, I had to. That is due to the negative karmas accumulated in previous lifetimes. Then when that happens, then without any choice or independence, those karmas are activated. The Buddha has said, and also as form of aspiration and prayer, may all sentient beings be separated from suffering and the causes of suffering. The root of all suffering is self-clinging. This we always say in the 37 bodhisattva practices. The root of all suffering is self-clinging, and the root of perfect enlightenment is bodhicitta, or the altruistic mind. If one has only conviction in them too, then one's actions of body and speech will follow this intention along. We need to recognize that the cause of our engaging in non-virtuous actions lies in self-clinging. If there is self-clinging, one has an attachment to the self. Then one wishes for one's own happiness. And should there be anybody who would prevent one's own happiness, one cultivates an aversion against the other. Should there be a danger to one's life, to one's body, or possessions, then we engage in non-virtuous actions and cultivate an aversion. Then, for example, people fight in wars, depending on the negative karmas accumulated in previous lifetimes. Karmic predators arise in this lifetime who cause harm to the life, who steal one's wealth, who beat one and cause one illness. So therefore, without any independence, one will experience some great harm. Whatever one has accumulated in the previous lifetime has been accumulated, and one has no more independence. One will be carried away by the strong winds of one's own karma. And therefore, it is important to not again engage in non-virtuous actions. The one who is creating those negative karmas are our own afflictive emotions. They are the seeds. And therefore we must cultivate great diligence to abandon all flaws, to abandon the afflictive emotions and the negative actions, and apply great diligence to cultivate love and compassion. If we are not careful at this point, then later on, without choice, we will be carried away by the strong winds of our own karma. And Rinpoche says, I myself and many of you may have experience with that. So before we are putting ourselves into great difficulties, we must maintain awareness and apply great diligence to abandon non-virtuous actions, to abandon afflictive emotions and self-clinging, and to give rise to bodhicitta, to love and compassion. So it is said, if you want to know what you have done previously, look at your present body. You can, through conviction in karma, understand your happiness and your suffering quite well. For example, if you are experiencing happiness, then you can think, what is the causes of this happiness that I'm experiencing? It is because in previous lifetimes I have accumulated actions of generosity, moral ethics, and patience, due to which I have achieved a precious human incarnation, prosperity, and all the happiness of the world. Also, each time we engage in practices such as the Nyune or Nyune, 2 days retreat practices, each time we accumulate a cause for a precious human incarnation. So in this way, one can contemplate the benefits of virtuous actions. On the other hand, if one is experiencing suffering, one also must understand that oneself has created this suffering. The one who has created this suffering is our own afflictive emotions within our own mind stream. Therefore, all sentient beings throughout the three spheres possess the same attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Once one has a mind and one is afflicted by self-clinging, necessarily and naturally the afflictive emotions of attachment, aversion, and ignorance will arise. The Buddha has shown that depending on those non-virtuous actions impelled by the afflictive emotions, suffering will arise. And this is nothing that the Buddha has created, but the Buddha has only shown the natural way of being of all phenomena. Lord Thupten said in the Gongchik that the Buddha has shown us the nature of all phenomena who exist in an interdependent relationship. In this way, he has shown the 12 links of interdependent relation. But this is nothing that the Buddha has created by himself, but the Buddha has only shown the natural way of being, and thus has explained the shortcomings of non-virtuous actions and the benefit of virtuous actions. And therefore, whoever engages in non-virtuous actions will have to experience suffering. And whoever gives rise to bodhicitta will experience the benefits of bodhicitta. All the happiness and suffering that we are now experiencing in our body is nothing that we can change much since we have accumulated the action in previous lifetimes. Therefore, if you want to know what you have done in the past, look at your present body. And secondly, if you wish to know where you will go in the future, look at your present action. So you can investigate your actions. How are my actions with body and speech? Principally though is the mind. What is my intention? Although we may engage in virtuous actions, if our mind is afflicted by anger, pride, or jealousy, then many faults arise from this. When we apply diligence, we must maintain this awareness. The Buddha has said, all sentient beings on their basis are the Buddha. Only temporarily they are obscured by states. So where is this Buddha nature? Where is this wisdom? It is the perfection of wisdom that we are talking about, and it is inherent within everyone's mind stream. If one has a mind, then one is endowed with with wisdom to some extent. For example, a little creature, a little animal, due to certain karmas, they take the incarnation, and yet they possess to some extent the wisdom to know, or they wish to apply methods to abandon suffering and to apply methods to be happy. We in a human incarnation possess some greater wisdom. Now in this world there are many different religions and tenets and different spiritual guides. Each one of them approaches or applies great methods to bring about great qualities and to abandon faults. They all possess those qualities. And depending on the connection that one has to the particular religion from previous lifetimes, one will enter this religion and one will gradually progress on the path. It is the Buddha's aspiration that then ultimately, due to being endowed with Buddha nature, all sentient beings will attain the state of Buddhahood. The Buddha has said, sentient beings are limitless like space. Their afflictive emotions and karmas and suffering are limitless. Such are the limits of my aspirations. Ultimately, all sentient beings have the potential to attain enlightenment, but we need to apply great effort and perseverance on the path. For that, we first need to cultivate conviction in karma, cause and effect. We need to purify our mind stream, and we are doing so by abandoning the 6 afflictive emotions and by engaging in the practice of the 6 perfections. So when it says, if you want to know where you will go in the future, look at the present actions. It shows that we now do have some choice. We have some independence that determines our future. There are many different philosophical schools and views in this world and traditions. But the Buddha has said, in the beginning, you need to know suffering, recognize suffering. Once one has recognized suffering, one will also inquire about the origin of suffering. What is the cause of suffering? It is our afflictive emotions. If one recognizes this, one will apply efforts to abandon those afflictive emotions. Some may think, so although I experience suffering now, whatever happens in the future may happen. There is nothing much I can do. This is a sign of limited wisdom. There's generally two different types of wisdom. There is the worldly and the worldly wisdom and the wisdom that transcends the world. The worldly wisdom is everything that has to do with this lifetime. Prosperity, happiness, fame, and so forth. Virtuous actions concerning the welfare of the country. The greater one's wisdom is, the more beneficial actions one can accomplish. For example, if one possesses this worldly wisdom, one understands the situation of one's country, one knows what is harmful to the country, one knows what is beneficial to the country, and knowing this, one will act in a beneficial way towards the country. Then there is the wisdom that transcends the world, that is beyond the world. That is the wisdom understanding reincarnation and the workings of karma, cause and effect. Depending on this wisdom, we realize the meaning of selflessness and thus achieve enlightenment. So there are those two types of wisdom, and in the same way, there are two types of perseverance. Some people persevere and practice diligently in order to achieve some temporary results. But if we apply the wisdom beyond the world, then we will achieve ultimate results. Only depending on this wisdom, we, in the first place, engage in perseverance. So in this world, and especially in Tibet, who was the one who has showed us the greatest perseverance and diligence? As we know from historical accounts, it was the Chechen Milarepa. Although in Tibet many spiritual guides have appeared, Milarepa is superior to all of them in terms of the hardships and endurance, the hardships and the difficulties that he had endured. And those we can see with our own eyes. For example, the many houses that Milarepa had to build and the stones and earth that he was carrying, all those hardships that he endured. How did the wish to endure those hardships arise? It all began with the contemplation on the difficulty to obtain a precious human incarnation with all its freedoms and endowments. The human incarnation is truly precious. Then, having understood this, one contemplates death and impermanence. This human incarnation will not last. And once one has died, one comes to the third point. One will follow along the karma that one has accumulated. Thus, one contemplates the incontrovertibility of the law of karma, cause and effect. Then, once one understands this, one has no other choice but to follow along the laws of karma. So first it began with the contemplation of the precious human incarnation, then with the understanding that it is impermanent, and then thirdly, the understanding of karma, which leads the way. When one thinks about karma, and if one is endowed with great wisdom, then fear will arise. Then a great diligence will arise, and the willingness to engage in hardships. Therefore, all practices need to have their root in the four thoughts that turn the mind. One may think, oh, the four thoughts are something very easy, and the people many times say, oh, I know the four thoughts, but what I really need to practice is Mahamudra and Dzogchen. It is true, we need to practice, but if we have no roots in the four thoughts that turn the mind, then the practices of Mahamudra and Dzogchen will miss their aim. Although we give it many names, Mahamudra and Dzogchen, what it really is a recognition of the nature of the mind. If one has recognition of the nature of mind, one can dispel all faults and acquire all qualities. one can clearly discern between qualities and faults. The teacher Milarepa has said, if one's mind is non-distracted at all times, there's no need to say much. One needs to look at the nature of one's mind. Milarepa has said one needs to eliminate the poisonous snake of afflictive emotions. If one doesn't eliminate the afflictive emotions, then although one engages in high practices, there will be no result in one's mind strain. Thus, the root is to understand the incontrovertibility of karma, cause and effect, and that root lies within one's own mind, within one's own afflictive emotions. One needs to understand that it is those afflictive emotions who cause all our non-virtuous actions. And it is the Buddha who is our own mindful awareness. And then one will understand and know how to abandon the flaw of afflictive emotions and apply great diligence. The Buddha has shown 3 different paths depending on these 3 different types of mental capacity of students. Lord Thich Nhat Hanh has said, although there are 3 vows that we call 3 vows, to give them 3 different names, but what they all aim for is one and the same. It is to understand what needs to be abandoned. In that regard, the 3 vows are non-different. Regarding diligence, it says in the 37 Bodhisattva practices in verse number 28, even heroes and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own welfare strive as if putting out fire on their heads. Seeing this, taking out diligent effort, the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings is the Bodhisattva's practice. And so here in the 37 practices, it points out a difference in the different vehicles. But from our perspective, we engage in so many difficulties and hardships and efforts, only being concerned about this lifetime, only thinking about oneself. We apply our body, speech, and mind to accomplish the welfare of only this lifetime. But what about the next lifetime? This lifetime is the day, the one is like it's as short as one single day, and it is fleeting like a dream. The teacher Milarepa has said, this life is like a day, and the next lifetimes to come in the future will be very long. For a very long time we will have to stay. And it is indeed very difficult to again possess the great virtue to obtain a precious human incarnation. So in the many different countries in the world, the situation is not quite the same. For example, here it would be difficult to say one has to give up one's family, one has to give up one's work and everything in order to practice. That is very difficult. Here we need to apply our body and speech in worldly affairs, but still we can train our mind. If we practice just according to the 37 bodhisattva practices, then in this and future lifetimes, very easily we will be able to subdue our mind. Then temporarily we will achieve the happiness of the 3 higher states, and ultimately we will definitely attain the state of enlightenment. So then there is no need to completely sacrifice all one's actions, body and speech in this lifetime, but one still can train in the altruistic mind. One can still have the aspiration that may I abandon all harm towards beings with body, speech and mind, and may I cultivate the altruistic mind. And when one has this intention, then one's body and speech will be like the servant of the mind. The body and speech will follow along the aspiration of the mind. And necessarily, we will have great results in the future. So we come to one of Milarepa's songs, and the story of Milarepa, where he met with some of his patrons. Generally, if one doesn't have sufficient merit, one will not even meet Milarepa as a patron. And amongst those patrons that met with Milarepa, there was one woman who had strong devotion to Milarepa, and her name was Shindormo. She said to Milarepa, I have strong devotion to you, and yet it would be difficult for me to follow you and practice just like you. But I will engage in great effort to practice the Dharma. Then they say, the patron said, although you are an authentic teacher teaching the profound Dharma teachings, there is many beings who do not cultivate devotion to you, into your instructions. What is the reason for that? And Milarepa replied, there is nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. It is just that sentient beings are unaware, are ignorant, and therefore, due to this ignorance, it is difficult to engage in authentic Dharma practice. Then although the Buddha's teachings have spread and they have obtained the precious human incarnation, it is due to the little merit that they have accumulated that no devotion arises within them. Okay, anybody have by any chance the 100,000 songs book? 대찰교라가 인식이 나와. 대전한 적답 숨기 속에 nobody has so the song that Rinpoche was singing, anyways, is in the big 100,000 songs book of Milarepa, the black book. It's on page 33. So what he's saying is and Milarepa speaking to all his faithful patrons and disciples who are endowed with great merits to have entered the Dharma teachings. And Milarepa is saying, those who still engage in non-virtuous actions are like fools. Now we have obtained an extremely difficult opportunity, which is the precious incarnation endowed with freedoms and advantages. To waste this opportunity through concerns of these lifetimes is truly foolish. To be concerned with the worldly concerns such as fame and great power, which are like an illusion. To be concerned with those shows that one is foolish. Since they are all fleeting, like a flower withering away. Therefore, to hold on to this lifetime as though it was steadfast truly is foolish. Our friends and relatives that we hold on to are an illusion. They're not real. To hold on to this lifetime and to those relations is truly foolish. Also, our possessions and material wealth is withering away. If we hold on to them with great stinginess, we are bound by our clinging and fixation. That's truly foolish. We hold on to this impure body of ours, which is so fleeting. If we still desire the happiness and bliss of this body and engage only in its welfare, is truly foolish. Although one has received those instructions which are like supreme nectar, if one still is bound by one's possessions, food, wealth, and business, is truly foolish. If you wish to abandon those foolish actions and wish to engage in the holy dharma practice, then practice just like me, the yogin. In order to be liberated from the ocean of samsaric suffering, one first must cultivate the wish to be liberated, renunciation. Here it mentions different than each of those things that we are attached to, such as our body, our possessions, and so forth. When we talk about each one of them, we see it's like having a garlic ball, and if we start peeling it, it becomes like each one of the layers becomes lesser and lesser. Rinpoche says, when I was young myself, and my root guru talked about the benefits of refuge, I thought at the part where it says, I take refuge in the Dharma, free from attachment. I was wondering what is the benefit of just saying free from attachment. It is the inner meaning of the Dharma practice is that to have an understanding of samsara suffering, that there is no happiness to be found in samsara. This point must be understood. If one doesn't understand this point, then one will be attached to temporary occurrences in this life, such as one's children, one's wife or husband, and one will think that this is a happy state. Then one's mind and samsara have become one. Then the wish to find liberation will not arise if one doesn't separate oneself from this mind. One must cultivate a disillusionment with samsara. One can cultivate a state where one's body remains within samsara, but one's mind separates from samsara, through understanding that samsara has no essence. One can question each of the attachments that we have. What is the benefits of cherishing our body? When we cherish our body, we need to engage in many difficulties. There are many expenses and so forth that only bear temporary benefits. But although that is the case, we need to be free from the two extremes. We should not cherish our body extremely well, but also we should not abuse our body and treat it in a bad way. If we practice in such a way, then ultimately one will find liberation depending on the Dharma practice. Samsara itself is a conditioned phenomena. Conditioned phenomena are impermanent. It is like the day of life, which is like a dream. Although we may experience some temporary happiness, we understand that it has no permanence, no stability. Through this contemplation, one's mind will become clearer and clearer. And then throughout future lifetimes, we will be able to purify the afflictive emotions within our mind stream. Then, although we do not have the opportunity to engage in the fluid retreat practice, one can still train and accustom oneself to the practice of bodhicitta. For example, in one's family, one can apply great diligence to not begin to quarrel and to fight, to not give rise to jealousy and anger and so forth at all times. So here in the text it says all the different things that we can be attached to, and there are many things in samsara that we crave for and we can be attached to. So this is a very essential point to understand. And then with regards to our attachments to our parents and relatives and spouses and so forth, the reason why we have met is due to the power of the karma that we have accumulated in previous lifetimes. Although we have met in this lifetime, this meeting is temporarily, it is impermanent, it is just like an instant. Very soon we will have to separate. Everything that is conditioned is in the nature of impermanence. So how do we apply diligence in this case regarding our families and friends and so forth? The love that we feel for them, to whatever extent we do love, we need to recognize that love to be bodhicitta. Then we need to contemplate that all the outer external sentient beings have been our parents, our friends and relatives in one or the other lifetime, and there isn't a single one of them who has not been our parents or friends or relatives. Therefore, one can use one's own family as a source of the cultivation of love. For example, all the expenses that one engages in is the perfection of generosity, not to not to give rise to afflictive emotions, but to maintain mindful awareness just in accordance with the 37 practices, to defeat afflictive emotions which are harmful towards self and others, that's moral ethics, to forbear negative words and improper actions and conduct, that is the practice of patience, and to continuously maintain mindful awareness and to continue to engage in those actions of generosity, moral ethics, and patience, that is perseverance or diligence. It is the inner diligence that we need to cultivate. It is our mindful awareness. If we cultivate this inner diligence, then all our samsaric action will become a virtuous action. So first, we take those who are dear and close to us, and then we think that all sentient beings have been our dear and close ones in one or the other lifetime. Then this love will transform into bodhicitta. For example, if one has love for one person, then one will be happy, and one will like to talk to the person who has given rise to love, because love is all-pervasive. And if one increases and nurtures this love, then it will become bodhicitta, and that is the bodhisattva vow that we are receiving. We need to think that it is this inner diligence of perseverance which makes us bring the precious jewel of bodhicitta from lifetime to lifetime in the future. If we practice perseverance, then all our samsaric actions will become a practice of the 6 perfections. Then everything we do will be a practice of generosity, moral ethics, and patience, and so forth. And then regarding those enemies that we have an aversion for, they only arise temporarily as enemies due to some external conditions that have arisen. They may have been our friends before, and then due to certain conversations and words or other external circumstances, they suddenly transform into enemies. For example, if they steal all our wealth, if we get angry with them, then this is the true harm. If we don't get angry, then we can just think there's nothing wrong with it. This person just is a karmic creditor. If I wouldn't have this karma, then the person could not steal anything from me. It is truly the anger that is harmful and nothing else. Because due to the anger, we will lose our love and compassion. We will lose bodhicitta. And moreover, if we continue to dwell on this anger, if we fixate on this anger, then the anger will become stronger and stronger and will lead to detrimental actions. such as killing one's parents, for example, or even committing suicide. So the true enemy is our anger. Everything that happens around it, we can think, oh, this is my own karma. Also, if we have a conflict with somebody, we can still talk about the reason and we can explain our situation. What is really harmful is the anger arising in our mind. And there are great benefits in maintaining patience. When one thinks about the karma arising from anger, anger will not arise. And one will be able to eliminate anger. Sometimes anger instantaneously arises, but it is important not to fixate on the anger. Some people are angry today and tomorrow the anger is gone. But if one continues to dwell on this anger, if one fixates on the anger, then the anger will increase and will cause harm to ourselves and others. It is like two cups when they are like when they clash together. Then both of them will be broken. But if the cup falls on the soft ground, then that soft ground is like patience. Nothing will happen. The cup will be unharmed. So that is a very important point. We first need to cultivate the inner perseverance, and we do so through maintaining mindfulness. Through, for example, not engaging in fights and so forth. So then we come to another story of Jetsun Rinpoche. When he came to a field where workers were harvesting, and within the workers there was one girl who cultivated strong devotion to the Jetsun, and then invited him to her home. And if you later find the book, then you can find it on page 145 in the big book. So in the song it says, he talks to Pardabum. Her name was Pardabum. You are of great merit. You are working hard for this lifetime, but do you have provisions that prepare you for the next lifetime? If you don't have provision for the next lifetime, then you will not engage in the meritorious actions of generosity. Then he talks about stinginess, which is the true enemy, which is the opposite of the practice of generosity. If you foster stinginess, then this will be only to the harm of the next lifetime. And if you understand stinginess to be the true enemy, then you will have like a proper provision for the future lifetime. Then he talks about do you have a torch that will lead you through the next lifetime. If you have not prepared the torch that will lead you through your next lifetimes, you have to meditate on the clear light luminosity of your mind that will lead you through your next lifetime. And you need to recognize ignorance to be the enemy. So do you understand ignorance to be the true enemy? If you understand, then you will have the forge that will lead you through your next lifetimes. And then he is asking, do you have a guide that will lead you through your next lifetime? If you have not prepared a guide, you must understand the only guide is the Holy Dharma teachings. And the enemy that opposes this guide is our relatives and friends. If you understand this to be the ultimate guide and enemy, then you have the guide that leads you through your next lifetimes. Do you have the steed or the horse that will lead you through your next lifetime? If you have not prepared the horse, then you need to learn that this horse is perseverance. And the enemy that opposes this is laziness. If you have the horse of diligence, you will have the horse that will guide you through your next lifetimes. Have you understood that laziness is the true enemy?
Succeed to the one path. That's what I don't really say there is some fun. 강의는 의사들이 아까 또 이까지 되지 봐요. 그다음에 너무 나고 너무 심해. 대개 받고 야 진짜 유머까지가 치기는 유머가 갖고 내가 아주 이상하게 I'm the one who is talking about it. You are the first one. You know what comes to us. They want to know what it is. Now they don't know. You know, the whole shit on it. Sit down, shut. Just a minute. 全部出ろ。全部この頭が引き割っては、こうなって、お三人全部こう、手話で手話っていうのはどうなって女性がいいんですよ。完璧にもう、先にこんなこう、韓国はそう思うんだ。で、全部出ろ、ずらこう、そっちは、手話では、あれは、いいっすよね。全部出ろ、こう、日本語がそう思う。아마 정말 뭘 살아 아까 생각대로 뭐 어머니지 아무살이지 뭐 왜 생사고 보면 내가 이미 상이 빠져있는 것 같아요. 싸우고 싫어가 이 사실이 있다. 야 아니 이런 거 보고 이 나오 또 나오 나오 야 생각을 하고 자 아비는 너 이런 싸움을 온다 said, Milarepa, it's a talk than the woman who wanted to 나와 사자지 오빠 냥들 이제 나로 들어 오빠 어느 거는 로카리 나오고 야 이가 더구나 제 아마로 이거 제가 예전에 내가 그래요 다음에 예시도 나고 이왕 나고는 대화에 오면 노래를 보면 대화를 보면 대화를 보면 왜 있고요 네가 잘 찾는다 센터 통용 정도 센터 나빠는 얘도 아무 짓을 못하나 영의 예를 대가지고 어느 사람이 뒤에서 센터를 앞뒤로 통한 상기 계속 이렇게
Generally, we consider the practices of the meditation of Mahamudra Dzogchen to be very important and precious, and that is true because, as Milarepa says here, this will be the torch that will lead us in our next lifetimes, and the only enemy is ignorance or unawareness. That light, clear light that will lead us, that is the recognition of the nature of our mind, our mindful awareness. If throughout the day, for example, we maintain mindfulness and heedfulness and recognize all the afflictive emotions upon arising and thus eliminate them, we will achieve independence. If we fail to give rise to mindful awareness and if we do not recognize the concepts and afflictive emotions arising, we will engage in action and accumulate karma, and thus will be other-powered. We will have no self-power or independence. Then it is those 6 afflictive emotions which will lead us to wander in the 6 realms of samsara, where we continuously engage in actions impelled by afflictive emotions. But if this body dies, the mind cannot die. The mind will remain. The mind is beyond death and beyond birth. If one understands and recognizes the afflictive emotions and concepts upon arising, then one will realize that after one's death, the consciousness will go on, and there is, in fact, no coming and no going, as it is said in the 37 bodhisattva practices in the very beginning. In the nature of the mind, there is no coming and going, there is no arising, and there is no cessation. If one realizes the innate nature of mind, one will not be overpowered by the afflictive emotions arising, and thus attain mental independence that is meant with the clear light luminosity. It is the recognition of the empty essence of the mind's nature, and the clear nature of the mind, which is clear knowing awareness. If one maintains this clear knowing awareness, then in the pardo, in the state after one's death, one will actualize the great qualities of the Buddhas, and naturally the Pure Lands will become manifest. But if one continues to be overpowered by the afflictive emotions, then these will give rise to the appearances of the lower realms. The self-light of ignorance will give rise to the appearance of the animal realm. The self-light of anger will make manifest the hell realms. The self-light of stinginess will make manifest the hungry spirit realm. For that sake, the Chilti Milarepa has engaged in meditation practice for so many years, to constantly maintaining mindful awareness. So in the beginning, we need to cultivate this mindful awareness. In the middle, we need to gain stability. The Drupa Kagyu teachings say the view is Mahamudra, and one's meditation should be the meditation of the 6 yogas of Naropa. One's conduct should be equal taste. That is, if there is no difference between happiness and pain. The Chetri Milarepa has said, there being no difference between happiness and pain, that is the most supreme of all instructions. Equal taste between happiness and pain. Then one will not be overpowered by happiness or pain. One will realize that happiness is essentially empty in nature. And in the same way, suffering is completely empty of self-nature. They are equal in their essential nature. In this way, one achieves a mental equanimity, a single equal taste. And achieving that, the mind will abide like the expanse of space. And one will achieve the great happiness, bliss, that is free from all suffering. And that is the clear light luminosity, the wisdom of clear light luminosity. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, all sentient beings are endowed with the Buddha. This is a very important point for us to understand.
So in the session before, we have said that the torch in our next lifetime will be the practice and the realization of the clear light nature of our mind. The obstacle that prevents this realization is ignorance. Thus, ignorance is said to be the true enemy that causes all the harm. And basically, the demon that obstructs diligence and perseverance is laziness. There's generally 7 different concepts of ignorance. That basically it is a non-recognition of the innate nature of mind. It is spending time in sleep where no qualities will arise from. It is, for example, to lack the wish of learning, laxity, forgetfulness, not being able to keep anything in mind, or getting angry for no obvious reason, although there's nothing wrong getting angry and have an aversion against others. The root of all this lies in unawareness. Not realizing the nature of the mind is unawareness. Not realizing and recognizing the nature of one's own face as it is ignorance. So there are 7 different concepts of ignorance, such as laxity and laziness, getting angry for no obvious reason, performing certain tasks without clarity. For example, when we are in the Dharma perspective, when we are reciting a text, not to recite it very unclearly or not thinking about its meaning, but also in a worldly sense, to just do things just to do them and not to really do them exactly the way they are supposed to be done. All of those principles, it can be condensed into its essence, which is laziness or ignorance. It is a state of sleepiness and lack of heedfulness. For example, if one lives to be 100 years old, then we spend about 50 of those years only sleeping, not accomplishing anything. So these days, scientists say that sleep is to some benefit of the body, but also too much is very harmful. So it is that ignorance that needs to be recognized.
So in this verse, there are many different examples. But for example, how one actually applies that. For example, if one doesn't have anything important to do, nothing, no special purpose, then one easily goes to sleep, and one can very easily fall asleep, and one thinks one always can sleep and sleep a lot. But if there's something really important that we need to do, something that we need to accomplish, then we will not sleep. Our mind will be very clear. So it is this one stage that it takes to realize the nature of mind. First, one apprehends the dream state. Then, after the dream state, ordinarily we fall into a state of unawareness. We become unconscious. But if one meditates with great perseverance, then one will recognize, even in deep sleep beyond the dream state, the clear light luminosity of one's mind. Death and sleep are basically the same. When we die, then first there is the white appearance, then the red appearance, and then the black appearance. In the same way, when we fall asleep, we first begin to dream, which is like the white and red appearances. And then when the black appearance comes in, we fall into an unconscious state. We lose consciousness. But if one knows how to meditate and with great diligence, then one will maintain mindful awareness, and one will maintain the mental clarity as one goes from the dream state into the deep sleep state. Therefore, Vijayati Milarepa has taught, as I'm meditating asleep, lying down. This is the core instruction of the dream yoga, clear light yoga. Within the 6 yogas of Naropa, one of the practices is the clear light yoga. That is, if one's mind has become completely clear and one has recognized one's own face, one's own intrinsic awareness, and then although concepts and afflictive emotions may arise, one will have no fixation into their reality. They will be rendered powerless. If one doesn't know this point of practice, then one may think that those concepts are harmful, and therefore we have to apply a method for those concepts not to arise. But this actually does not happen. The concepts only sometimes maybe do not arise, but they will arise, but they have no power to cause any harm if one doesn't have any fixation to their reality. And that is when mindful awareness can hold its own seat. So first one needs to recognize this state, and then one needs to stabilize this state. Through this stability, one then recognizes the clear light luminosity of mind. This is the most important point. This story is told by Milarepa to Pardabum, his female disciple, and basically all his teachings on perseverance are contained within that teaching.
아까지 뭐도 싸우고 야 이마트 요란데 그러고 이란데 그러고 힘받네요 그래 그래서 꼭 포커스 기도다 아 나도 생각해요 그래 그거 심하네요 야 야로 가라 아 뭐죠 야 뭐라고 써졌을 거다 뭐 너도 뭐가 기도다 맞아 너도 그런 탐지를 갖다 드리고 사조선 나가니까 말하는 이시가 말하면 무슨 내가 뽑아서 강 그대로 뽑아줬구나. 집안에 와서 말을 또 됐다. 나도 그렇게 한번 당선대로
Probably most of us fear death. A practitioner for that preparation for the next lifetime engages in practices such as the generation stage yoga or mantra recitation, if one knows how to practice. Then another practice is the practice of poa. It is said that through that one may realize the innate nature and there is no separate practice needed. Or one engages in the practices of Mahamudra or Dzogchen and realizes the nature of mind by means of these practices. After realizing that nature, one also then needs to habituate that state. The Chetty Milarepa has said what perseverance is to look at your mind as you're walking, look at your mind as you are sitting, look at your mind as you are sleeping, look at your mind as you are eating. That is diligence. For example, if we are eating and we look at the nature of our mind, we are eating something, but then generally we give rise to concepts of this is tasty, this is not tasty. Immediately we would have concepts of attachment and aversion. To look at the mind would mean to maintain mindfulness and to recognize those concepts immediately upon arising. Then one would recognize that this concept of being tasty or not tasty is only a temporary appearance. Ultimately, it is nothing but a mental perception. So if one has this single taste, if one recognizes that this is just a temporary mental perception, then when there's, for example, tasty food, one will think, I can eat this now, it is tasty, and later, if it is here or not here, it doesn't make a difference. Then one would not crave or be attached to the food one is eating. Then the eating of the food would become a feast offering if one's mind remains undistracted. One would have no fixation to the taste. Also, during the time one is sleeping, the instruction is to recognize the clear light luminosity of the dream state. The instruction of walking or all the activities that one is engaging in is never to be separated from the two-fold bodhicitta, never to be separated from mindful awareness. Then, wherever one goes, it would become just like taking a pilgrimage or making a circumambulation around the temple or something like that. So in the beginning, it is important to cultivate this inner perseverance or diligence.
하나 제대로 하자면 그래서 나는 이거라 뭐 하라는 사람들이 다 그래요. 보다 하라는 이 상황을 이게 좀 안 되고 이 제대로 진짜 뭐 내가 토끼 이거 말고 내가 방법도 보고 그래. 남들이 내가 지고 내가 뭐랑 함께를 가지고 그냥 보세요. 발라서 이 상황을 가지고 자기 고각도 말이 강하게 교랑 함께 주시 봐요. 이게 주시 봐요. 그래서 보다 뭐도 아주도 참아 남을 통로 좋아. 남을 통로 좋지. 남을 통로 아마도 좋아. 답이 너무 많지. 아무것도 아니 실고도 저기 그래서 사제 주로 이렇게 또 이때가 바로 봤는데 예능이 쫙이 봐 사족수마 어에 저가 봤는데 다들 봐 괜찮네 나가 사제 되게 싫어 최대 다르게 사는 게 아마 요즘 이렇게 양호하게 나는 싫어 이게